Welcome, everyone. I'm Rob Sahutsky.
And I'm Zach Miles. You're listening to Babble of the Beltway.
Welcome back, everyone, to week 15 of Babble of the Beltway. Unfortunately, Sergi is not feeling well this week and will not be on the podcast, but we do expect him to return next week. We had some fantastic games, and we're excited to talk about them. But first, how was your weekend, Zach?
Man, it was so much has changed over the past week and a half. And I'm really happy for it. So I'm starting to substitute, as you know, and this might sound really kind of lame to some people or whatever, because it's not like I'm actually a real teacher, but man, substituting is already starting to change my day-to-day life, in the sense that I'm getting so much out of it. You know what I mean? I'm getting so much love from the kids, and I'm getting so much fulfillment in general. So that's been really cool. That has been helping to combat my Washington football induced depression, excuse me. Not the regular kind. And so, it's just the whole thing, man. But I'm happy. I had family from Norway come in again. So it's I have 3 cousins all from Norway, and they're all visiting individually, which sounds kind of goofy, but I think it's awesome because I get to spend individual time with them. So my second cousin, Emma, she came in and we had a great time, spent time with extended family, and it was so cool. But what about you, Rob? Tell me about your weekend.
On Friday night, I was able to see Spider-Man No Way Home.
Dude, how was it?
It was an awesome movie. It was a maelstrom of just nostalgia and just bringing me back. But we're not going to give any spoilers here. It was a good one. From the trailers, those of you that have seen the trailers, you know what I mean. There's just a lot of callbacks, a lot of really, really good stuff. I love the movie. I know it wasn't for everyone, but a lot of people loved it. Everyone who loves Spider-Man so far has absolutely loved it and thought it was amazing. So definitely recommend it if you're a fan of Spider-Man, especially if you watched those movies in the early 2000s and the 2010s. I also went to a small Christmas party on Saturday. That was fun. A little bit of gift exchange here and there, just gearing up, taking a lot of time off next week and the following week. Pretty excited. I got to watch a lot of football, and I'm excited to talk about it. And this week, we're going to be giving you our mid-season, although we are a little bit late on that whole mid-season aspect of it. We kept saying we were going to do it. This week, we're actually doing it. We're going to be giving you the top 10 NFL teams.
Weekend recap.
3, 2, 1.
After week 15, we had a lot of games that shook up our top 10 list. Looking at you, Arizona Cardinals. So now we feel like we have to tell you who the best 10 teams are. Now, I do want to give a little bit of a disclaimer. We're talking about the teams that are the top 10 at this very moment. Now, this very moment is about 7 o'clock on Monday. So we still have not seen the COVID delay games nor the Monday Night Football game. We just want to give you that disclaimer. So if we seem really stupid because maybe the Rams beat the Seahawks 73-3, that's on us. We haven't seen that yet, So be patient with us. But Zach, who is number 10?
Number 10 is one of my personal favorite teams, where ultimately I don't think they're going to be able to pull it together for a Super Bowl, but I'm still high on them. I was going to say San Diego, the Los Angeles Chargers. Spoiler, I guess, call them San Diego, unless you guys are too young to remember, in which case you're babies, so you're not listening to the podcast and actually taking in the information. All right. Justin Herbert has been pretty awesome the entire year. I've been a big fan. You guys know that. Hey man, it's not our podcast if I'm not saying something weird at some point. I got to do it. It's just who I am. It's not even intentional. So Justin Herbert's been great. I know that his stats have been in a way rather underwhelming, but he is on pace to throw over his career more touchdowns than any player in history. He's already thrown in his first 2 years worth of starting more touchdowns than any player has ever thrown, including Patrick Mahomes in their first 2 years of starting. It's pretty incredible stuff. It's really wild to see. I'm a big Justin Herbert believer. They have a top 3 passing offense. They also have a top 3 passing defense, or excuse me, top 10 passing defense, but they have a bottom ranked rushing defense, and their rushing offense isn't exactly great. Austin Eckler has COVID now, I believe, and also has had some injury issues here over the past 6 or so weeks on and off, where it's kind of affected his play. But I mean, at the end of the day, the Chargers are a good team. They're a solid team. They're not a team that's going to blow the doors off of you in most situations. And there's somebody that you can go into a game and generally expect them to at least be competitive or play, up to the standards of the opponent. So Chargers number 10. Right now, there's a little bit of concern with Parham and with Keenan Allen. But like I said, still think they have enough talent. There's enough there on the offense between the coaching staff, which is rather inexperienced and young still, and a young pass catching core, but it has pretty decent players like Jalen Guyton, Keenan Allen when he's healthy. Donald Parham, it's not looking like his concussion is going to be a long-term thing that's going to force him to retire, which is crazy because if you saw the injury live, it was one of the most disturbing, because it wasn't even like a hit. His head just hit the ground and it was whiplash and he seized. He locked up. And I've only ever seen that once or twice before, and it happened to a girl in my high school after she suffered a concussion and had a seizure in a soccer game. You know what I mean? So it's these things happen. You just never want to see it. But we're going to go with the Chargers number 10. Obviously, Rob and I have kind of difference in our own personal power rankings, I guess we could call these, our own personal rankings in general, but we came to a consensus for the podcast purpose. And number 10, this is what we're going with. Run game is the problem. Rob, who's number 9?
Number 9, we have the New England Patriots. Now, this is funny because I can actually imagine people having a problem with this both because they think it's too high and also because they think it's too low. The
Facts.
Patriots are a very weird team right now because their roster, in the opinion of this podcast, is fairly weak. But the coaching element makes them a threat at any given time on any given week. So you take the Patriots and you tell me that it's a bad weather game, I'm picking them over any team. You tell me the other team has a young quarterback, I'm picking the Patriots. If you tell me the other team has a gimmicky offense or they're very one-dimensional or they have one player who's a superstar, I'm picking the Patriots. However, once you take a team with actual talent and balance and a good head coach, the teams that you see in the playoffs, I think things are going to start to get messy and not in the Patriots' favor. The Patriots have a very good defense and a very good special teams. That cannot be taken away from them. But if you look at the raw roster talent on this team, I don't think it's enough to beat playoff teams. And I especially don't think it's enough to beat 3 or 4 playoff teams in a row. Mac Jones is good. Don't get me wrong. I think he is the best rookie out of the draft with the exception of maybe Micah Parsons, right? I think he's the top offensive pickup in the draft. But he's not Brady. At least not yet. And how do we know this? We know this because that's what Belichick has told us. Bill Belichick told us that Mac Jones is not ready in the Bills and Patriots game because he gave Mac Jones 3 throws. Bad weather game or not, when you give your quarterback 3 throws, that does not shout player who I trust to carry my team when it's needed. Josh Allen threw the ball, and he experienced success. Was it a rough game for him? Yes. But when you tell me that you only trust your rookie quarterback to throw the ball 3 times and you're going to run every other play, that tells me he's not ready. And for that reason, the Patriots, despite a very good record and a very good late season showing, they're slotted in at the number 9 spot.
Number 8, speaking of the Patriots, the most historic Patriot of all time and his team. Number 8, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What? How did they drop all the way to 8? Honestly, they haven't been that great. They've found ways to win. They're kind of like the Cowboys. they've been finding ways to win despite their inefficiencies or their deficiencies, whatever it is you want to call it. They've had a good defense outside of their secondary, and even then, you can't really blame them that much. They've had like 5 or 6 starters go on IR or people who have started games. It's crazy to see what's happened with the Buccaneers. But the reason they're number 8 is because we're talking about right now. And right now, Chris Godwin tore his ACL yesterday. It was a tragic hit. The guy is on a 1-year franchise tag deal, which means that he's probably going to have to sign a rather low earning deal next year, which is really unfortunate because honestly, there's not many better people as a whole than Chris Godwin in the NFL, let alone talented players. So Godwin tore his ACL. Mike Evans strained his hamstring. Leonard Fournette strained his hamstring. Levante David had a foot injury. And they just got shut out by the Saints. The Taysom Hill quarterbacked Saints, mind you. So the guy who was benched for not just Jameis Winston, but also midseason pickup Trevor Siemian, which is bananas to think about. But they haven't been able to beat the New Orleans Saints, so maybe that's just kind of a testament to who they are. And these divisional games are kind of crazy. But with that said, injuries have put them in a very tough situation. And Godwin, who was playing that Larry Fitzgerald role in Bruce Arians' offense, the Hines Ward role, they were talking about it last night in the game too. Godwin has been the guy that they will funnel targets through. He's out. He's done. He can't do anything to help them. And he won't even be back until probably September of next year. So the defense is great. Tom Brady is obviously still pretty good. I mean, he's thrown more passes than any other quarterback in the NFL. He has 611 passing attempts right now. I think it's like 40 more than second place. So that's a little concerning. But with all that said, the Bucs are a good team, not great team right now. And moving forward, might expect to see them struggle a little bit too, but probably not too much.
At number 7, we have the Buffalo Bills. Now, this team has a monster of a roster. And in my opinion, they should easily be the number 1 seed. However, their problem is that they refuse to hand the ball off to their backs. And they also can't seem to shut down the run efficiently either. They are a team that is built to throw the ball every down, and they're a team that is built to stop you from throwing the ball every down. Teams that are good at running and have a good passing defense, they can pose a serious threat to the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills' entire offense revolves around Josh Allen playing MVP caliber football. Can you really trust your quarterback to play like an MVP every single game, to do it all? To pass accurately every single play, to run, to be your leading rusher every single game? That is a tall task to ask of one player. The weirdest part about this entire situation is that their running backs actually show really good production when they're handed the ball. And yet, for some reason, they don't get handed the ball. Very few games has any individual back been given double-digit touches. And if they have, they're usually the only back getting the ball that game. The more and more that I watch games of the Buffalo Bills, I'm seeing defensive linemen, if they manage to get through, they completely just ignore the running back. It's funny because I actually think the Buffalo Bills running backs are so good because the defensive linemen get tricked by actual handoffs. To explain how absurd that is to you, the play action is currently less of a trick play than actually handing the ball off. Because every single play, they go for Josh Allen. They say this is clearly not a handoff. Your team doesn't hand the ball off. So they go straight for Josh Allen every play. I've seen their running backs, when they actually get the ball, maybe 6 times a game, run straight through the defensive line because it's a trick play. Handing the ball off is a trick play for this team. And it's actually insane to me. It blows my mind. If they just tried to have a balanced offense, I don't think there's any team that could truly match up with them. They are that good of a team. They're that talented on both sides of the ball. They just refuse to hand it off for whatever reason. I mean, God forbid Josh Allen gets an injury or gets roughed up or has a bad game, their playoff hopes are over. If he has a bad game, they lose. Period. Until they can fix this, they are going to be a team that consistently smashes weaker teams. And you've seen it all year. Bad teams. They'll win, they'll score 40 plus points and hold them to single digits. But once they play teams that are actually good, playoff caliber teams who understand them and understand how to beat them and have the personnel to do it, the Buffalo Bills are going to struggle. And I don't think I can see this team making it to a Super Bowl, and I certainly can't see this team beating an NFC team in the Super Bowl if they can't run the ball. And even worse, if they can run the ball and they choose not to. So for that reason, Buffalo Bills, very talented team, but they're locked in all the way up at number 7.
Number 6. This one's painful for me because I'd probably rank them a little bit lower, but that's also due with personal bias. It's the Dallas Cowboys. Now, since Dak hurt his calf, the Cowboys have been in this kind of weird slump. It's been a 7-game slump. They've won 4 times. They've lost 3 times. Their wins have been pretty ugly. Even against Washington. They didn't really earn that win. They just weren't as bad as Washington. You know? And that's the thing about the Cowboys right now. That's what's misleading about their record is that they're not necessarily earning the wins, at least not on offense. You know what I mean? They're just not as bad as the other team's offenses. But Dak looks rough. But if your bad football team still finds more ways to win games than lose games, you're probably a pretty decent football team. And while the Cowboys have plenty of imperfections, they also have a bunch of really good players, specifically on that D-line between Randy Gregory, DeMarcus Lawrence, and rookie phenom Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons sitting out for a year in college was probably the best thing that has happened to the Cowboys in 2 decades, because that man would have been a top 5 pick if he had played last year, unless he would have gotten hurt, and then he would have not probably been the same player that he is right now. Either way, the Cowboys got the steal of the draft. I don't care if he was just number 11 or 10 or whatever he was. He was truly the steal of the draft because he should have been 101. Mm-hmm. He should have been the number 1 player drafted.
Hard one.
And it's not even close. He could be the second player only to ever do it, but also the second player just ever to be the defensive rookie of the year and the defensive player of the year. He's that good. He penetrates that well. Don't make it weird. He's fun to watch. He makes a lot of plays on the ball, and he's everywhere. And that's the thing about Micah Parsons that's so different and special and unique. He's not like Lawrence Taylor, who Lawrence Taylor was a drug addict, and he would do drugs before games, and he would do uppers, and it would make him more efficient. If Micah Parsons is doing that, I mean, we're not going to speculate because I don't think he is. But I'm saying, like, if Micah Parsons is doing that, he's not getting caught. But with that said, Micah Parsons is able to get into the defensive backfield so quick. He's essentially like a safety and a defensive lineman and a linebacker. He's everything that somebody could want in a defensive player. And it's incredible to watch. If it wasn't for Micah Parsons, honestly, I would probably lower the Cowboys almost out of my top 10. But he's worth at least 3 wins a year for this team. I really think that because I'm pretty sure he's won them 3 games almost by himself. Mm-hmm. Their defense does give up big plays, and I get it. Trayvon Diggs has 10 interceptions. That's awesome. That is super impressive. He also allows, 180 yards a game to good receivers, or at least good receiver, quarterback combos. And it's not a bad thing. It's because most of the time he's trying to go for the pick. He's trying to go for the play. I think he's had 4 defensive touchdowns this year, maybe 5, maybe 6. I can't remember, honestly, off the top of my head. We're going to have to get the fact-checking monkeys by Bananas or whatever it was. We're just going to have to get it fact-checked by Bananas, guys, is what I'm trying to say. But their defense has a couple big playmakers, and that's what sets them apart from somebody like the Buccaneers, of whom just suffered a lot of losses on the offensive aspect of the team, and their defensive backfield is not great. They really have one true contender remaining on their schedule, and that's the Arizona Cardinals. And if the Cardinals play anything like they did last week, they're not much of a contender. But you could also argue that if the Cowboys play anything like they have for most of the last 7 games, they might not also be much of a contender, at least on offense. But their defense is what secures them a top 6 spot this week in our power rankings.
Sitting at number 5, we have the Arizona Cardinals. Now, for most people, the Arizona Cardinals were sitting in their top 3. I think the most that I saw them was 2. There were a couple people that had them at their number 1 slots, even after their recent losses. This week, I think it's pretty obvious we had to take them down a couple notches. You don't really get to lose to the Detroit Lions. Well, correction. You don't get to get blown out by the Detroit Lions and stay in that like top 2, top 3 thing. You're going to get knocked down a couple notches, even if it's just a one-off. I mean, we're very reasonable on this podcast, but dude, you got blown out by the Detroit Lions. Like, you're getting knocked down a couple notches. I don't care how good you are. They're a very good team. Injury bug definitely has hit them like a lot of other teams this year. Hopkins is out for this season, or at least until probably the NFC Championship game, should they make it there. JJ Watt is posting all kinds of like weird propaganda about him somehow miraculously overcoming like 5 separate seasoning and ending injuries, whatever, dude. If you
the
say
deer
so.
antler spray.
I know.
Deer antler spray.
James Conner clearly was not 100%. Chase Edmonds still coming off of the high ankle sprain. So a lot of injuries on this team. They've been struggling as of late. It's just, God, the Detroit Lions. Come on. Like, I would understand if it was like some freak accident and you lose on a field goal, but they got blown out. And this game was never close. It was the Lions just straight up beat them on every aspect of this game. So I don't know. It's tough. They've lost 4 out of their last 7 games after being the last undefeated team remaining. Packers and Rams beating them, I get it, right? Those are both good teams. I mean, you're dealing with injuries. Rams are a good team. Packers are a good team. But getting blown out by the Panthers and the Lions, that kind of makes me question some things. Why are you getting blown out by bad teams? That's very nerve-wracking. And we're talking about a team that has Super Bowl aspirations. The Panthers did that to you? Man, what are some of these really good teams going to do to you, you know? So I still have faith in them. I didn't want to knock them out of the top 5, but this team's, they're slipping. And if they can't get it back together, they might be a one and done in the playoffs. So they have the talent. I think their coaching staff is innovative enough, especially with their offense. I haven't lost faith, but they are a team that is in danger of being a one and done. They need to get their act together and fast. But for now, we don't overreact on this podcast, like, half the time. So number 5, still the Arizona Cardinals.
I will just add to that really quickly. I think that this is right here. 5 to 10 is where the tier changes. 4, so I guess 1 to 4 is where there's really 2 tiers, I'd say, and 4 is kind of in a tier of its own. And then anything beyond 4, like from like 5 to 10-ish, a lot of these teams are interchangeable, or at least 5 to 8, in my opinion. So I think it's, if you're looking at a tier-based thing, the Cardinals and the Cowboys and even probably the Bills are in the same tier, even if the Bills are so much more talented than those other, than those other 2 teams. But that's just if we were to identify by tiers as opposed to the actual numbers themselves. Just in defense of the Cardinals, I don't know. I don't need to defend them. They're all millionaires, and I'm not. So, number 4, we have the second team in Los Angeles, the Rams. They had a bit of a 3-game shellacking that was making a lot of people question how legitimate they were. They lost to the Titans, they lost to the 49ers, and the Packers in back-to-back weeks. Matt Stafford threw a pick 6 in all 3 games, and it was really kind of on him, I think, that was dragging the team down. The Titans aren't great. They've been kind of deceptive here and there, but, ever since they've just been ravaged by injury, Julio Jones hurting his hamstring yet again, the dude's done. He's washed. But, between Julio and everything that happened on that team, you never knew what you were going to get with the Titans. The 49ers, another one of those up and down teams where it's just like, they're really elite one week, and then the next week it's like George Kittle doesn't play, so they're not. So, you have those things right there. But the Packers are an elite team. They're arguably the best team in football, and we'll touch on that in a little bit. But I still have to say that those losses were fairly concerning, but not so concerning to where we think that the Rams are done. I still think that they're serious contenders. I know Rob was a bit more bullish on the Rams earlier in the season. They were his sleeper, your Super Bowl pick, right?
Yeah, they were my Super Bowl pick.
Yeah. So, there's still a chance that they can do that. I think those 3 weeks were more of an anomaly and maybe kind of like a wake-up call, because since then, it's the Jags, but they've blown them out by 30 points. And then they trounced the Cardinals in Arizona. And I know that they're not playing until Tuesday, so unless they get really blown out by the Seahawks, then I think we would look like dummies at that point. But as long as that doesn't happen, and they either win by a lot or just win by a little bit, I think that the Rams are still a justifiable number 4 spot in total.
We're protected by plausible deniability.
Yes, 100%. 100%. Odell has started to look like Odell again, which is kind of cool. He's had a touchdown in 3 consecutive games. And maybe the super team that they were trying to build has finally started to mesh. Because a lot of the time, man, it's a team sport. It takes a lot to really make something happen with these teams. And maybe they're finally there. We'll see. Rob, who's next?
All right, so number 3, this is the big reveal. This is the part of the movie where you find out that the murderer the entire time was the friend that you never suspected. This is going to catch a lot of people off guard. Number 3 is the Indianapolis Colts. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of questions. I'm sure a lot of people they're listening to this while they're driving. They just swerved into another lane, said, wait, what? They're okay now. Everyone's safe. The Indianapolis Colts are, I would argue, the sneakiest and most deadly team in the NFL. And I don't think people have picked up on just how good this team is yet. They started 1-4. They had a lot of issues early season. They were trying to figure things out. Carson Wentz was injured because he's made of glass. There were a lot of problems going on with this team. Since then, they have gone 7-2, and they are now in the playoff conversation, sitting at, I believe, 8-6. Now, they have a very bad matchup with the Titans. They did lose twice to them this year, but it's important to mention that was with Derrick Henry in both games. So we're talking about a very good Titans team back when they were like the AFC favorite, right? Without Derrick Henry, obviously, I mean, it's questionable if they even make the playoffs. But with Derrick Henry, they're probably the best team in the AFC. So the Colts have those 2 losses. They also lost to the Buccaneers, but when I watched that game, I said to myself, the Colts are the better team. They honestly would have won that game if once they had the lead, they actually ran the ball. And we talked about it a couple weeks back when they played this weird mental thing where teams are afraid to run against the Buccaneers, which is why they have they had at least the lowest number of attempts made against them. And when you're not using Jonathan Taylor, I mean, that's just silly. He's arguably the best player in the league. So I felt that was more of the coaching and the offensive game plan throwing it. I believe the Colts are better than the Buccaneers. They blew out the Bills. That game wasn't even close, and we know how talented the Bills are. So the fact that they just kicked them to the curb like they were nothing is insane. They shut down the 49ers. We now know the 49ers are a legitimate team. They're a legitimate threat, and they have a lot of really talented weapons. And this past weekend, they trounced the Patriots. The Patriots, who were the number 1 seed, they beat them fairly definitively. They had a multiple score lead on them for most of the game. And by the time the Patriots actually managed to turn it into a 1-score game, Jonathan Taylor breaks off a 67-yard run and ends the game right away. The moment that you get hope, Jonathan Taylor just takes it away from you. Now, I know that the Texans aren't exactly anything to brag about, but in the 2 games that the Colts played the Texans this year, the score would have been 62-3. Meaning, in both games, they've allowed 3 total points from the Texans. I don't care if it's a bad team. That's crazy to prevent any NFL team from scoring more than 3 points over 2 games. That's 120 minutes. Every 40 minutes, you get 1 point, Texans. Congratulations. That's crazy.
You know, it would make that a lot more fun.
What?
Is if they had only allowed 4 points. So it was like 2 safeties or like a field goal return for 2 points. Sorry, I'll shut my face up again. Go ahead.
So I want to go back to the Ravens game as well, the Ravens versus Colts game, because this was the moment when I realized we have a problem here. This is not some like crap team. They handily beat the Ravens back when the Ravens were healthy and actually like a legitimate threat. I'm trying to not say actually every 20 seconds. That's a bad thing that I do. I'm sure you guys have noticed it at home. I'm working on it, I do promise. But back when the Ravens were a legitimate powerhouse in the AFC and a threat to win and be the 1 seed, Colts beat the brakes off of them. The only reason the Ravens won that game, it took like 3 or 4 what I would describe as miracle plays, and it also took like 5+ injuries, most in the defensive backs, to let us back in that game. We had to block a field goal. Their kicker had to get injured. That's what it took for the Ravens, who were then probably the best team or the second best team in the AFC, to beat the Colts. They are the real deal. And as of right now, I would argue they are the hottest team in the NFL. They are the team with the most momentum. They are the team playing out of their mind. I mean, I don't have the stats off the top of my head, but we looked up Carson Wentz. We looked up his stats. He has like almost 4-1 touchdown to interception ratio. You know, Carson Wentz, the turnover machine, almost 4-1 touchdown interception. Now, if the MVP award was not rigged to basically always go to a quarterback, Jonathan Taylor would win it. I can't tell you the last time he got a game where he had under 100 yards. I also can't tell you the last game where he did not have a touchdown, because I believe that was 12 weeks ago. 12 weeks ago was the last time, because he has his current streak is 11.
Yeah.
He has had 11 straight games with touchdowns.
And I think it was 4 games ago when he didn't have 100 total yards. He fell 3 yards short.
Yeah.
Because he almost had that record of most 100 total yard games with a touchdown.
And before that game, you'd have to look, I think, 6 or 7 games back to find the one before that where he didn't get 100.
It was 8. It was 8
games, yeah.
It was 8 games because the 9th game would have been the record. Every game except for one this year, he's had over 100 yards and a touchdown.
This guy is out of his mind. He is the number 1 fantasy football running back every single week. He's an absolute monster. He could carry a lot of bad teams, in my opinion. This Colts team is giving him gaps, and he is tearing them up. This team right now, this Colts team, I believe is a legitimate contender. Now, I'm not 100% sure about the coaching staff. I believe, what is his name, Frank Reich? Is that his name?
Yes.
Right? Can't remember. Yeah, I think that's his name. I think he's a very good coach. I don't know.
Or maybe it's Richt. Maybe it's Richt. I don't know. I think it's right.
We'll get brought to you by Bananas to fact check that. But this team...
we should just say that every time.
We really should. Do not sleep on this team. They are a legitimate Super Bowl contender right now. I think they are the most slept on team. I think they are the hottest team. Look out for the Colts. We have them at number 3.
Next up, we have probably my... what used to be like my favorite team outside of Washington, but probably not anymore, just because I hate this guy's brother. The Kansas City Chiefs. And specifically the brother that I hate, Jackson Mahomes. And I think Ravens fans can join me in that as well. So the Chiefs they've worked their way back to looking like the team that they were when they were winning the Super Bowl, when they were contending for Super Bowls, when they were contending for AFC championship games. So pretty much all of Patrick Mahomes' career. For the first 13 games this season, I wouldn't say that. I'd say the first 10 games this season, they just really looked like a mess. Like they couldn't get it together. And maybe this will be the one team that actually benefits from having an extra game this season. That way they can get their wonky stuff fixed out. Because at this point, Patrick Mahomes still isn't really fixed. He's still not doing the elite things that he did. Yes, he threw for 400 yards passing, but half of his passing yards were after the catch. I mean, when you have, as Rob said earlier, 2 nuclear missiles in Tyreek Hill and Rob Gronkowski, who, when they don't drop the ball, because they are two of the leaders in drops.
Oh, Kelsey. Sorry. Not Rob Gronkowski,
Yeah.
Kelsey.
Oh, did I say Gronkowski?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. I thought I said Travis Kelsey.
I could have misheard you. We'll fact check Banana.
We'll fact check it. Bananas. Yeah, bananas. So Kelsey and I probably said Gronk. So Kelsey and Hill, if they're not dropping passes, those two dudes are the number one at their position probably in the whole NFL. So when you have the two number one producers at the position, or at least from a talent perspective at that position, and you have arguably the number one quarterback from a talent perspective, you're going to have some really awesome games. With that said, it's more about the Chiefs looking like an entire team now, which is why they're number two, as opposed to just that offense. The offense was holding them back. That defense has truly become elite over the last 6 or so weeks. And now that Bashaud Breeland was cut in Minnesota, the one spot where the Chiefs probably could still use some help, and most teams in the NFL could, is corner. And if Breeland goes through waivers, I fully expect the Chiefs to sign him again, because he was on their squad when they won the Super Bowl. And I expect Breeland to come back, and whatever sort of, potential personal issues he has, which apparently he's had throughout kind of his whole career, which started in Washington. It's part of the reason why he fell in the draft when he came out of Clemson. But I think that if Breeland comes in and really does what he expects to do, he completes that Chiefs defense, in which case the only thing that you have to hope for is Patrick Mahomes really turning it around and fixing himself on offense. So if the Chiefs can do that, man, sky's the limit. Super Bowl's the limit. I mean, we could finally see another team really stand up and become a dynasty again. As the Patriots in the 2000s, the Patriots in the 2010s, the Chiefs have the chance to do it. They've already started with one, right? Because didn't they technically win in the year 2020? Because it was the 2019 season.
I can't remember.
I can't remember either. I'm pretty sure they won in the year 2020, and then the Bucs won last year, which was 2020 to 2021 season. And that means the Chiefs, if they win this year, will be 2021 and 2022 season.
I think so.
So that'll be 2 of the first 3 years of this decade. So if the Chiefs find a way to really put it together on offense like they did this past week, even if it's just the receivers not dropping passes and Mahomes not throwing iffy balls, and that defense continues to play well, and they sign Bashaud Breeland, that's not too many ifs. That's really not too many ifs to expect a potential championship run. They're the second hottest team in football right now, bar none. And I would even argue that maybe they're in the same tier as that number one team, because I think that it's tiers 1 are the top 2 teams. Tier 2 is the Colts. Tier 3 is the Rams, and then tier 4 is everyone else. Rob, who's number 1?
All right. Number 1, hopefully at this point in time, you have noticed the absence of a particular team of immense talent. This team is a very special team because not only are they owned by their fans, but they also own a second franchise, the Chicago Bears. At the number 1 spot, we have the Green Bay Packers. This team obviously has the best record in football. But more than that, they have probably one of the best all-around teams in the NFL. They have quality wins over the Rams, the Cardinals, the Bangles, the Steelers, the 49ers, and the Ravens, depending on your opinion of them, if you think that's a quality win still. But all of those teams are teams that are threats still in the playoff hunt. All of those teams have been beaten by the Packers. Their only losses were the Week 1 debacle against the Saints. I mean, I think that Week 1, it is what it is. I don't think that's any indication of where they are right now. They lost to the Chiefs, the number 2 team, when Aaron Rodgers was on the COVID list. And by the way, they barely lost that game. They only gave the Chiefs 13 points, which is no small feat considering Kelsey and Hill. Their third loss was to the Vikings in Minnesota. Now remember, divisional rival, and despite the fact that the Vikings are an incredibly snake-bit team with, I think, in my opinion, coaching issues, they are a very talented team, especially on offense. So let's talk about this Packers team. They have an incredibly deadly 1-2 punch at the running back. I don't want to say that it's the best 1-2 punch because I think a lot of teams have really good 1-2 punches right now. But when you look at A.J. Dillon and you look at Aaron Jones, I see two running backs that could be starters on almost every other team in the NFL. Aaron Jones is the sort of finesse runner, the agility runner, the speed runner, who's just going to take 12 yards from you sometimes. And if you make a mistake, he might take 70. You got to be really careful when Aaron Jones gets the ball because sometimes he's just gone and there's not a whole lot you can do. He's had a couple really good angry runs this year. Then you have A.J. Dillon. A.J. Dillon is like that, what was that called? The Madden like hit stick where like you press it and then you just truck someone. Truck stick. A.J. Dillon is a big boy. Mm-hmm. He eats his Wheaties every single morning. He weighs well into the 200s.
I think he's 6'2", like 235 or something. He's a big guy.
He has a lot of weight to him. He's surprisingly fast for his weight. He is very surprisingly agile for his weight and fast for his weight too.
His legs are as big as my torso, and I'm fat, so that's crazy.
Yeah. A.J. Dillon, he will truck you over. And if you're on the goal line, you're in a tough situation against this team. Because not only do they have A.J. Dillon, who if he goes up between the tackles, you're probably in trouble, but they also have Aaron Rodgers, who is a first ballot Hall of Famer, MVP quarterback, who is galaxy brain most weeks. You'll hear more about that in the awards section. He's playing elite. He's the reigning MVP. Honestly, he could probably be MVP again this year if there weren't so many good candidates. He might be MVP again this year. We'll see. And
I think he will be.
And on the flank, they have Devante Adams, who is probably the number one wide receiver in the NFL. I'm not really sure what you're supposed to do in a goal line formation. You have Aaron Rodgers, who I didn't realize this. I think he was like top 4 or top 5 quarterback in rushing touchdowns because I saw this on a different show. He gets a lot of rushing touchdowns. Because you have to cover the center from A.J. Dillon. You have to cover your sides because he has, sometimes it's Randall Cobb. He has Devante Adams. So he has wide receivers that can destroy you. He can run it in. I don't know how you stop this team on the goal line. It's hard. Yeah, there's a reason they put up so many points every single game. And their defense, they have multiple showings this year. Very impressive. They're getting pick sixes in games when it really matters. This whole team is just complete. They do have a lot of injuries on the offensive line right now, but I don't know that it matters. They've made it look like it doesn't matter. Now, one thing that I always say, and I'm sure I've said it plenty of times on this podcast, it's the hardest time to play a team is when they are a good team that's been going through a slump and then they have a get-right game. That is the hardest time to play against a team. Because they're coming out, they're firing on all cylinders, and your tape could not have prepared you for that moment. And that is what I think happened this past week with Ravens and the Packers. The Ravens have struggled 3 or 4 weeks in a row. Tyler Huntley comes out of nowhere, and this kid just starts bawling. This kid is playing out of his mind. And there's not a whole lot the defense can do because Mark Andrews is either the best tight end or the second best tight end. Marquise Brown did his fair share, and Huntley is just having the game of his life. That is very hard to play against. But the Packers still won. Mm-hmm. They still won that game, despite their O-line injuries, despite the fact that their defense could not have possibly prepared for what came at them. But they won. And that's something that we've seen. I think the game that convinced me the Packers are the number one team was the Cardinals game when they went without their top 3 wide receivers and they beat the Arizona Cardinals in Arizona. That right then and there was enough. I knew the Packers are the best team in the NFL. I don't know of any team that can go without their top 3 wide receivers and beat a very good team like that. The Packers are right now the number one team in the NFL. They're very close to the Chiefs. I think the Packers edge them out. There's a little bit of a gap. I wouldn't say they're tied or like both tied for one. I think the Packers have a clear edge over the Chiefs. Not by much, but they have a clear edge. So to give you a review before we move on, number 10, Chargers. Number 9, Patriots. Number 8, Buccaneers. Number 7, Bills. Number 6, Cowboys, to Zach's dismay. Number 5, Cardinals. Number 4, Rams. Number 3, Colts. Number 2, Chiefs. And number 1, the Detroit Lions. Oh, I'm sorry, I misread that. The Green Bay Packers.
Awards for the worthy.
Wow. Up next, we have the awards section of the podcast, starting out with Earth, Wind, and Fire. Earth for the best rushing attack of the week, Wind for the best passing attack of the week, and Fire for the best defensive effort of the week. Zach, who is this week's Earth Award?
I don't think there's anyone else that could be debated for Earth this week. It's gotten to the point where we're considering just renaming the award the Jonathan Taylor Rushing Award of the Week. JT cracked 100 yards against the Patriots. They tried to take him away. They just couldn't do it. He needed to keep his touchdown streak alive, and he just made it happen. I mean, the guy is unreal. He's special. He has so much burst. And I remember how people were trying to argue that he was slow, but he exceeded 22 miles per hour, which is insanely fast. Insanely fast. The guy is fast. He's strong. He's playing behind one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. I mean, so obviously every time he wins the Earth Award, so does his offensive line. But I mean, he's not to overuse the term that started all this, but he's bananas. And I love it. You know, he ended the game with 170 yards on 29 carries and a touchdown. And the guy is truly a special talent who doesn't even need to get 30 carries a game to be special. That's the difference between him and Derrick Henry. Rob, who do we have for Wind?
For the Wind Award, we are going to be giving it to Pat Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Tyreek Hill. Now, for many of you who have been watching this podcast every week, you know, usually we give it to the quarterback who had a big passing game. This week was a little bit different. So Pat Mahomes had a big game statistically, dropped 410 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. However, we can't in good faith give it just to him because over 50% of those yards were yards after catch, specifically from Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. Travis Kelce had 10 catches for 191 yards and 2 touchdowns. So we're going to give you a fun fact here that's going to sound unreal. Travis Kelce had a 100-yard receiving game in yards after catch. Now, a 100-yard receiving game is this like, oh, I had a really, really good game. That is a fantastic game. To have a 100-yard receiving game in yards after catch is like Madden. That's like plug in your controller and play Madden because that's the only time you see that. It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. Tyreek Hill, yeah, it's awesome, but it's also disgusting. Tyreek Hill had 12 catches for 148 yards and a touchdown. Now, for those of you that like math, that are crunching these numbers in your head, yeah, those were the only 2 guys that did anything this entire game. The next receiver only had 3 catches for 22 yards. This is a case of 2 receivers that are just dominant. There are 2 receivers on this offense that are so far and above the competition that they are virtually uncoverable. This is why I'm kind of hesitant to say that Mahomes has been fixed or that he's gotten his things straight. He really does have 2 of the probably top 5 wide receivers both on his team. He's still making some mistakes here and there. He still has some issues, but when you have those kind of weapons, if you play a mistake-free game, they're going to reward you. And in this game, they rewarded him with 210 yards after catch. So congratulations again to Pat Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Tyreek Hill on this week's Wind Award.
Next up, we have the Fire Award with this week, guys. It's different. It's different because I'm going to do a little honorable mention here. Every other week, it would be the Saints. And that's the truth. Based on that performance, shutting Brady out for only the 3rd time ever in his career, where the last time it happened was almost 20 years ago. And the following news article was that everybody hated their coach, Bill Belichick, which he's still there, by the way. It's crazy that they were able to do that and they were able to shut out that entire passing offense. But we got to give the award to somebody different. Not because of that, but because of just how dominating they were on the defensive side of the ball. And that's going to go to the Detroit Lions, guys. This might be the first award that they win that doesn't have to do with them being awful, or the first time that somebody hasn't won an award against them, if that makes sense. Because so many times we have chosen the team that's beaten the Lions. But this time, we are sticking with it. The Detroit Lions win the Fire Award for the best defense this week. They blew out the Cardinals. The Lions are in a similar situation to the Ravens in the sense that they've lost 10 defensive backs, and they're activating practice squad members every single week to deal with these high-powered offenses. And the difference is that the Lions really stepped up and made it happen versus the Cardinals, who, as I said many times earlier to start the season, had played to the lower parts of their competition. And they're doing that still, and they haven't fixed that. So they only allowed one conversion on fourth down out of the 3 attempts. The Lions shut down the only 2-point conversion attempt that was also tried. They turned a 1st and goal into a turnover on downs. They intercepted Kyler. They sacked him twice. They handed him a 58% completion rate. And the 4 red zone trips for the Cardinals had a 0% efficiency. This was a textbook game of a team that plays for their coach and stepped up to the level of difficulty that they needed to in order to win the Fire Award. So congratulations to the Detroit Lions. And I'm actually going to go ahead and get us started on our more creative awards, I guess you could call them, the more goofy ones. The first one is going to be the Deepest Sleeper Award. And this goes to Tyler Huntley. And this, yes, of course, has to do with not just real football, but also fantasy football, because he was the top fantasy football quarterback in most people's playoff matchups this week, but he was only started in less than 1% of all those leagues. And honestly, being somebody who won almost every one of my playoff matchups, with the exception of the league that I probably care about the most, I really could have used him because I had Tom Brady in that league. So, oh no, I didn't. I had Taysom Hill. Still sucked. Doesn't matter. Needed Tyler Huntley.
Not great.
Not great. Unless Kirk Cousins goes off tomorrow for 45 points, I'm out. And that's the truth. So that's the Deepest Sleeper Award. Rob, what do you have for us next?
Up next, we have the I like iPods better anyway award. And this goes to Tom Brady for breaking his Microsoft tablet on the sideline in a fit of rage after throwing an interception and getting shut out by the Saints. Rest in peace to that Microsoft tablet. It got the worst of Brady rage, which we've seen a lot of over the years, I meant, not this year. He hasn't raged that much this year, but over the years, we've seen a lot of Brady rage. This poor Microsoft tablet just didn't stand a chance.
Next up, we have the, I don't know, maybe stop hiring college coaches award. And that goes to Shad Khan for finally ending the Urban Meyer experiment and freeing the players from a weird and abusive regime. And I'll touch on that with another award in just a few minutes. Rob, what's next?
Up next, we have a very special award this week called the Double Galaxy Brain Award. I've never given out a Double Galaxy Brain Award. I usually give out the Galaxy Brains. This one was extra special. It's the chess match of football. It happened in the Ravens-Packers game. Now, to kind of build the scenario, a Ravens defensive back was giving Devante Adams about 8 yards of cushion, which, by the way, that is massive respect. He then takes 2 more steps back. Devante has a full 10 yards of cushion being given to him. That is an unreal amount of respect to give a wide receiver. Now, Rodgers sees this. He gets ready to take a snap. All right, easy wide receiver screen, maybe 5 yards. Devante breaks a tackle. That's 40, 50 yards. Let's do it. The moment Rodgers goes to snap, the defensive back immediately starts charging Devante Adams. At this point, Aaron Rodgers just got galaxy brained by a Ravens defensive back. He now has a play that is the literal worst play he could have at this given moment in time. So does Aaron Rodgers throw an interception? No. No, he does not. Because in real time, mid-throwing motion, Aaron Rodgers sees what is happening and somehow cancels his throw. I don't even know how this happens. He stops his throw and brings it in to his chest, just undoing his throwing motion. And then he turns around and runs. I think he only got a yard on the play, but any other quarterback that I've ever seen, this is either an interception, a tackle for a loss, possibly a fumble, and a lot of times an injured wide receiver. So Aaron Rodgers got galaxy brained by the defensive back on the pre-snap, and then he galaxy brains mid-play to figure out what's going on and canceling it. It's crazy to see that kind of high-level situation where two players do something incredibly brilliant on the same play. So congratulations to both of them. I'm sorry, I don't actually know the Ravens defensive back. I don't know which one it was. I mean, he was probably one of the high schoolers we promoted for this game. I've never heard of him. But just as someone who loves the game of football, that was incredible to see. So congratulations to both of them on the double Galaxy Brain Award.
Next up, we have the I Don't Mean What I Say award. And that goes to actually like the NFL. I don't mean the players. I mean the entity that is the NFL and Roger Goodell at commissioner, due to their inability to follow their word. And rather than cancel games due to COVID and prevent potential outbreaks in locker rooms and everything else, just rescheduling them for a couple days later after stating that teams would be forced to forfeit should they be the reason why a game is canceled. Effectively, Cleveland, Washington, and the Rams all should have taken L's this week due to their inefficiency or inability, I guess, well, both of them, to prevent COVID from rampaging through their locker rooms. But the NFL said, no, the money matters too much. Let's reschedule it. And they did.
Money talks. Up next, we have the If It Ain't Dallas, Tampa Bay, or Kansas City, we're throwing the flag award. And this goes to the NFL officiating this season for just somehow being the worst. I know every year we say this is the worst officiating I've ever seen, but this year just feels even worse than the worst that it's been every other year.
It's tangible. There's like, I can't remember where the statistic came from. So maybe, I don't know, maybe it's not. But I swear there's a statistic that shows that the NFL has had over 300% more wrong calls this season that have needed to be either defended or have not been mentioned post game for like this weird Twitter account or this weird site that like tracks like officiating statistics. It's crazy. Officiating is awful. They need to change it.
Yeah, and I'm sure that this is completely unrelated to the fact that sports betting is now legal. Anyway, Zach, carry on with the next award.
Our last award for this week is the We Tried Everything, but it was the kicker award. And that goes to Josh Lambo for ending Urban Meyer's reign of terror. If you guys don't know this story, Josh Lambo went to the press and talked about how when he was the kicker for the Jags, Urban Meyer walked up to him, used profane language, and kicked him physically in the leg. Now, it wasn't a light kick, and I don't even know. I wouldn't kick my friends, so I don't know what a light kick would even be. And it wasn't like a super MMA kick, but it was a strong enough kick to where he felt pain. He retaliates, and then Urban Meyer says, I can profanity kick whoever I want. I'm the head ball coach. That's what caused him to get fired. It didn't matter how many times Trevor Lawrence was trying to throw picks. Didn't matter how many times James Robinson tried to fumble the ball away. Didn't matter how many times Laviska Shenault, Marvin Jones, and all of their receivers decided, hey, we're not going to be good today. They finally found a way to get rid of Urban Meyer, and everybody should be thanking their lucky stars, and by that I mean Josh Lambo, for getting Urban Meyer out of the NFL. Now, that's it for awards this week, guys. We don't really have a Washington football update. It'll be really light. But first, we're going to be going to, honestly, it's pretty much my favorite outside of the Washington football update, the Ravens update, right after this.
Ravens Update.
Okay, so I want to start off this Ravens update by saying that I don't have a Twitter, so please send all hate mail following this update to the Babble of the Beltway Twitter. We're just going to shout out the socials now because some of y'all are out of control and need to be called out. Look, I think that Baltimore Ravens fans have forgotten just how low the talent floor is on this team. I have seen friends and family members raging about the Ravens game and about Harbaugh's decision-making and the aggression. Ladies and gentlemen, we had 29 players on our roster that were either on injured reserve, out, or were injured during the game. 29. You could form a team with those 29 players. You could form an NFL franchise and actually operate an offense, defense, and some special teams with the number of players that we have injured. Our defensive backs, their names, let me know if you recognize any. Geno Stone, Tony Jefferson, I believe we cut him, and then we had to get him back. Anthony Averett, oh hey, that's actually a starter. But that's funny, Anthony Averett, wasn't he the guy who teams were intentionally targeting on every single throw earlier in the season? Fun fact, he's currently our top cornerback and our best cornerback. Robert Jackson, fun fact about him, I tried to Google him, couldn't find him. Had to add in Baltimore Ravens, add in NFL. Could not find him on Google. It kept bringing up some Civil War dude. Could not find this guy on Google. Mozzie Wilkins. Don't know anything about him. Brandon Stevens. Okay. Anthony Levine Sr. Oh, he plays special teams. Well, I guess he's a cornerback now. And Kevin or Kevin Seymour. Seymour, random people off the streets on your team is more like it. So I'm familiar with about 2 or 3 of those names. Now, I just want to explain this to you. When you have Robert Jackson, I found him on Google, by the way. It took me about 5 minutes. I did find him on Google. This guy got pulled up from the practice squad. On his 3rd snap of the season, he is covering Devante Adams, the best wide receiver in the NFL, in the end zone. We have some random dude covering the best wide receiver in the world in the end zone. That is where we are at right now. That is where this game is going. I am honestly at this point saying Coach Harbaugh, he should be coach of the year for the fact that he held the Packers below 50 points. The fact that we almost won this game is unreal. We literally have the Mighty Ducks playing defense for us, and we almost won this game. Do you understand how crazy that is?
Yeah, that's gross.
Now, I understand. Some people are going to criticize Harbaugh for giving up 3 points on the first drive. I understand that. I understand this criticism. But what I need to point out is that we gave up 3 points, and in return, we gave the Packers bad field position. And when they ended up having to punt, we then got the ball in Packers territory. So was that 3 points worth it? Did we gain anything? Would resetting the field position have mattered? We ended up getting a touchdown. We got the first touchdown of the game because of the field position game. If you get stopped on the goal line, it's not that bad. The other team has to go 90, 95 yards to get a touchdown, right? And if they end up losing their field positioning battle, you have a chance to score, which is what happened. So I understand that people are upset, but if you kick those 3 points, you might not then get the 7. And with reasonable field position, they might not have to play extra conservative, and they might get points. So I think it's important to remember that anyone who loves movies or books that talk about like traveling back in time, you can't just change one event without changing the entire course of the game. More importantly, this should not be a surprise to you. If you didn't know this was coming, you don't know the Baltimore Ravens. This is the identity. We take big risks. We try to win. We were not the better team. Anyone who thinks the Baltimore Ravens are better than the Green Bay Packers with the state of our team and our current injuries, you quite simply just don't know the Baltimore Ravens. We were the worst team out there. We knew it. Harbaugh knew it. We were the underdogs in every single betting circle ever. So you got to play to win. We're not just going to go out there and play conservative and lose the game. That's an unrealistic expectation. The 2-point conversion, I knew it was coming when there were 7 minutes left in the game. I said, if we manage to score here, and if we get the ball back and we score again, we're going for 2. We're not going for overtime. Anyone who has watched the Ravens, anyone who understands the Ravens' identity, you should know. I was shouting this the entire fourth quarter, much to my girlfriend's dismay, and believe me, she was not happy about it. I knew what was going to happen. We're not the better team. Are we going to risk going to overtime? If they win the coin toss, it's over. It's over. Because Civil War General Robert Jackson is going to be covering Devante Adams or Alan Lazard or Valdez Scantling. Like, are you kidding me? Like, there's no way. There's no way I'm accepting that. Even if we get the ball first, do you think we're going to be able to move down the field and get a touchdown? Because Justin Tucker may be the greatest kicker of all time, but unless we're burning 9.5 minutes in overtime, the Packers are turning right around and they're scoring a touchdown anyway. Mm-hmm. I completely understand going for 2 points. I don't blame him at all. He did it last week because we didn't have any D-backs. He did it this week because we don't have any D-backs. Our entire practice squad is starting. We don't have a practice squad. We're going to have to start putting linemen in covering Devante Adams. Like, oh, well, here's our right guard covering Devante Adams. Here we go. Like, it's absolutely insane to me. It's absolutely insane. And I think the thing that bothers me the most is that if Harbaugh plays conservatively and we lose, people are going to say we lost because Harbaugh played conservatively. If Harbaugh plays aggressive and we lose, people are going to say it's because Harbaugh played aggressively. Can we all just admit that it's not about how he played? It's not about how he coached. It's that we're a results-driven society, and the NFL is a results-driven game. If Harbaugh wins last week, the Ravens are geniuses. Harbaugh's a genius. He went out there, he made the right call, he won the game, genius. If we go out there, we get that 2-point conversion, we win this week, how did the Ravens steal this win from the Packers? We are looking at one play in an entire game, and we are allowing that to determine 2 completely opposite narratives of, oh, the Ravens grossly outplayed expectations, upset of the year, versus, oh, Harbaugh choked, bad coach. It doesn't make any sense, and we have to be honest with ourselves about that. It's not logical. We can't let our entire narrative about a game be changed based on one play. This is the Ravens' identity. And for those of you that took the time, research, you would see Harbaugh asked the coaches, he asked the players, he asked everyone, what do you want to do? If we get this touchdown, are we going for it? They all said go for it. Go for the 2. I would not trust my 16-year-old cousin in high school to cover Devante Adams. Okay? And honestly, one more injury, he would be starting out there. So let's just be reasonable about this. If you want to blame a coach, okay, let's play the blame game. Let's pick someone, let's pinpoint someone, let's try to get someone fired, because that's what we do when we lose games. Let's fire Greg Roman. I don't hate the 2-point decision. What I hate is the fact that every single person, Ravens fan, Packers fan, NFL, people that don't know football, people that don't watch football, my pet iguana, I don't even have a pet iguana, every single person knew exactly what play was going to be ran. Every single person said, oh yeah, Mark Andrews is alone on the right side. He's going to run towards the right. They're going to throw the ball to him. That's going to be the only choice, and he's either going to catch it or they're going to lose the game. Every single person knew this. There was no question. We all knew it. The defense knew it. Why do you think they sent their defense over to Mark Andrews? Because they know he's getting the ball, right? And we even know what route he's running. That's the sad part. It was almost the same play that we ran last week. You knew exactly what was going to happen. Everyone knew what was going to happen. The defense knew what was going to happen. At that point in time, why don't you just fake it? Just fake it. Have their whole defense go cover Mark Andrews and just hand the ball off or just throw it to the other side of the field. Everyone knew what was going to happen. That's such a good time to throw a fake in. But again, we have no innovation. We have no, play in our pocket. We just have the same play that we're like, oh, well, it just didn't work last week. Let's just throw it out there again and see what happens. If you want to fire a coach, fire the offensive coordinator. I'm done with the Harbaugh hate. I'm done with it. Ravens fans don't understand how good they have it. Honestly, if the Packers threw every single play this game, if they ran 0 times, I believe they would have scored 60 points in this game. Every time they ran the ball, I said, oh my God, they're keeping us in this game. Because we have number 2 rushing defense, and we have worst passing defense.
It's crazy.
If they threw every play, we would have been destroyed. completely demolished. But they didn't. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Rodgers completed 74% of his passes, and every completion averaged over 11.5 yards. That means 74% of his completed passes are for a first down or more. You're not going to win a game like that on defense. So I don't know what people are talking about. The fact that we not only didn't get blown out, but that we almost won this game, it's time to be appreciative of Harbaugh. Let's cut this BS hate of Harbaugh. He is a much better coach than almost anyone out there. You want to fire Harbaugh, go ahead. You're going to get a significant downgrade. Speaking of significant downgrades, why does Tyler Huntley look better than Lamar Jackson? Can someone please explain this to me? Tyler Huntley looks like what Lamar Jackson was supposed to be, and I don't understand it. Now, Lamar is a better athlete. I don't think there's any question about that. But Huntley, he's actually throwing the ball when he's supposed to throw the ball. There were a lot of plays where the ball is snapped, immediately thrown. I don't see Lamar do that. Lamar likes to hold onto the ball. He likes to run around and then get sacked, or run around for 10 seconds and then throw it to Andrews, or get sacked and then try to throw it to Andrews, or roll left or throw it to Andrews, roll right, throw it to Andrews. He also has throw it to Andrews and throw it to Andrews. And that's his entire progression. Is Andrews open? No, buy time. Is Andrews open? No, buy time. Is Andrews open? That's Lamar when we talk progressions. That's Lamar Jackson's progressions. Huntley was different. Mark Andrews got 136 yards on 10 catches. What does that tell you? Big plays, get chunk yards down the center, let Mark Andrews cook. Marquise Brown got 43 yards on 10 catches. What does that tell you? That tells you have a secondary option picking up little chunk yardage underneath in the soft spot that they're leaving open to cover Andrews. Huntley is attacking different areas of the field. He's spreading pressure to different parts of the defense. So you can't just triple cover Andrews every single play. This is how our offense is actually designed to run. That's the frustrating thing. The reason that Huntley outperformed Lamar isn't because Huntley's better than Lamar. It's because he took what the defense gave him. And this is the kind of hero ball that we've been talking about with Lamar and with Mahomes. Huntley outplayed Lamar. And it's not because Lamar isn't gifted. It's not because Lamar can't pass. It's mental. It's decision making. It's decisiveness. And it's just being a baller. So that was really frustrating. Unfortunately, the Ravens have been officially knocked out of the playoff seeds. They're still in it. They can win some games. If they beat the Bangles, we'll be back in it. We have some hope, especially at the time of this podcast. Browns just lost. Great news. Last thing I want to say, I got really upset on the final drive. Now, Hollywood Brown, don't get me wrong, he caught 4 passes in a row. He was doing a lot of work. But he was so gassed that there were a couple plays he didn't run routes. He just stood there. And I'm talking passing plays. He just stood there. He was so gassed. And that upsets me because my whole thing is either you're running routes or get off the field, sub out. I understand 2-minute drill. Maybe didn't have time. It's complicated. Is what it is. I was upset about that. I'm sure he has good reason. I hope someone asks him so that I don't just have to blindly hate him. But that frustrated me. Other than that, can we just say the Ravens had no business being in that game? And the fact that we were is a testament to Coach Harbaugh's ability. That's how I feel about it. Please send me hate mail at our Twitter at Babble of the Beltway. Or no, that's not even what it is anymore.
No,
it's Beltway
Babblers, because Babble of the Beltway is too long.
Yeah, that's my opinion. I hope I offended you. Please send all hate mail to Beltway Babblers.
Washington football team, I guess, update.
Guys, welcome to the Washington Football Update. Not a very big update this week. Very short update. So this one actually doesn't have anything to do with the team because obviously you guys know by now that their game was delayed until Tuesday at 7 p.m. So tomorrow, 7 p.m. Or if you're listening actually today at 7 p.m. at this point. They had 21 players going on the COVID list at the height of it all. Now they're down to 14 or 15. But I'm here to talk about the name. So the apparent finalists for the name for the team have been released, and I hate most of them, but there's a couple I like. The names, in no particular order, would be the Washington Armada, the Washington Red Wolves, the Washington Defenders, the Washington Brigade, the Washington Commanders, the Washington Red Hogs, the Washington Presidents or just still the Washington football team. Honestly, if it's not the Red Wolves or the Red Hogs, and for real, just get rid of the word red. We don't need it. Just make it the Wolves or the Hogs. Like, if we were the Hogs, bro, like, we won 3 Super Bowls with the Hogs as our offensive line. 3 different quarterbacks, 3 completely different teams and offensive identities. You know what was the same? The Hogs, the offensive line. That 100% should be the name, even though I like Wolves better. The Hogs should be the name of this team going forward because it is the only rich part of their history now. But with that said, if it's not the Hogs, the Wolves, or the Washington football team just staying that way, I'm going to riot. I'll just go outside of and this, I guess, is premeditated because I'm putting it on my podcast, on our podcast.
He means he's going to riot on the podcast, just so the FBI is clear.
On the podcast, and I'm also going to show up to the stadium with picket signs and stand out just like 1 foot away from trespassing, so that way I'm not trespassing. And I will organize a circle of people who will do the same. I don't care who they are. They could be my biggest enemies, but it's going to happen. We're going to do it. So here on this podcast, we're pro Red Wolves or just Wolves and pro Hogs. We also would be pro Sentinels, but unfortunately that's not an option. I don't know. Sorry. Yeah. I'm not happy about it, but if we go Hogs or Wolves, I'll be happy. If we don't, what else? Yeah. Right. What else can I do? Yeah. What else can I do anymore with this stupid team? It's the worst thing that's ever happened in my entire life. And that's not even, I've done a lot of, I failed out of college at one point, and that was not as bad as my love for this team. And I'm not joking. This team has caused me more pain than anything else. So let's go on to our picks, Rob. Let's go to the next segment.
The future is now.
The future is now.
In our next segment, The Future is Now, we will look into our magical podcast crystal ball alongside our research monkeys and tell you who will win the games of Week 16. Up first, we have 49ers at Titans. The 49ers have elite playmakers all over their offense, and the Titans have elite playmakers all over their injured reserve list. The 49ers will win.
Next up, we have the Browns at the Packers. The Packers are pretty shaky on the offensive line right now. They're missing their 2 starting tackles, and they just haven't been great. Myles Garrett will probably very well could decide who it is that wins this game. But with that said, we don't anticipate our number 1 team on this podcast losing to a team not inside the top 10. We're going to choose Packers over Browns.
Up next, we have Colts at Cardinals. The Colts are hot and the Cardinals are sliding. Expect an upset, assuming, that the Colts winning is even considered an upset anymore. I would be surprised, but
I don't know.
Colts win.
Next up, we have Lions-Falcons. And like a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, this would be pretty easy. I'd be like, it's definitely going to be the Falcons. But after this week, man, honestly, I might just jump ship and become a Detroit fan. I don't care how bad they are and that their ownership sucks too. I love Dan Campbell. I love what he's doing with that team. I'm all aboard the Detroit train. Let's go Motor City, Detroit over Atlanta.
I think I'm in the same boat. I call it a reverse bandwagoner. Dude, I love the Lions. I love them. I love watching them. They're so much fun.
It's impossible not to, man. They're awesome.
Up next, Rams at Vikings. The Rams will likely beat the Vikings, even though the Rams act like them sometimes and then just lose to teams that they absolutely shouldn't. But we think Rams win this one.
Next up, we have Jaguars at the Jets. I know Urban Meyer's gone, but the Jets are still at least slightly less dysfunctional. Jets are going to win. This game's going to suck.
Giants at Eagles. The Giants are just plain bad this year. Eagles figured out handing off the ball a couple times a game. Turns out that's a recipe to success. Eagles win.
Next up, we have Bills at Patriots. We don't think the Bills are going to be swept by the Patriots, especially the Patriots coming off the loss this past week against the Colts. I and Rob are both of the opinion that the Bills have the better team, and barring any sort of extreme weather, so we are putting an asterisk here because Bill Belichick is a sorcerer, and he has a way of making this happen.
He's the weather god.
He's the weather god. He can make it rain, not even just from money because he makes a lot of it, but just everything. But we're gonna go with the Bills over the Patriots in one of our upsets this week.
Up next, we have the Ravens at Bangles. Now, based on everything I have said about my opinion of the current talent level of the Ravens, you might be surprised. I believe that the Ravens are going to win this game. The Ravens are currently grossly outplaying their talent level, and that is a testament to John Harbaugh and his coaching ability. Again, fight me. The Bengals are incredibly inconsistent. They have fantastic weeks, and then they have weeks where they are absolute duds. I really doubt that we're going to be surprised by Jamar Chase like 2 times in a row. I hope we're going to learn, like, hey, this guy's actually kind of a big deal. We should take him seriously. And the Bengals are giving the Ravens bulletin board material. One of the Ravens defensive backs, Eli Apple, happened to say on Twitter that Lamar Jackson was going to be very generous this week to the Bengals defense, providing them with lots of interceptions. The last time the Bengals talked trash to the Ravens before a game, it did not end well. I think the Ravens are going to look at that. They're going to get a big team win. If it's Huntley, if it's Jackson, I don't think it matters. I think they're going to ball out. I think Ravens are going to take this one.
Next up, we have Bucks at Panthers. The Bucks have a lot of injuries to big guys. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, obviously out for the season. Leonard Fournette and Levante David. We're going to go with the Bucks. I know it's weird to say that it's maybe not a super comfortable go here. Like, I don't know if I would take the Bucks -7, if we're talking about betting terms, but I'd still choose the Bucks over the Panthers.
We have Chargers at Texans. So the Chargers are far and away the better team here. I don't think there's really any question there. Chargers are going to win.
Next up, we have the Bears at the Seahawks. Gross game. Awful. Hate to see it. Wish they'd stop scheduling these games. Gonna go with the Seahawks.
Broncos at Raiders. The Broncos are seemingly falling apart at the seams. They're having a kind of rough time. For those of you that don't know, Teddy Bridgewater had a very scary concussion. He will definitely not be playing the Raiders game. He's had a lot of bad concussions in his career. He's had a lot of bad injuries in his career. I hope Teddy's okay. Really, the Broncos are more about their running game anyway, so we'll see if Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams, is that it?
Javonte Williams.
Williams. We'll see if they can take control of this game. But the Raiders did just beat the Browns, fun fact, as we're filming this. I think the Raiders will take this game as well and take a big advantage with the injuries looming at a home game.
Next up, we have the Steelers at the Chiefs. The Chiefs are returning to form, and they're at home. And that is one of the hardest stadiums to play at if you're away, especially when the team's playing good. And the Steelers they're just bad, man. I mean, they've found a way to be weirdly competitive in quite a few games this year, but they're just playing above the level of team that they are. Chiefs going to win, no doubt in our minds.
Washington at Cowboys. Now, I don't think that McCarthy is dumb enough to guarantee a win again, but they will win again. Cowboys win.
Mm-hmm. Next up, we have, and this is our last one, Dolphins at Saints. I'd say the Dolphins, but considering Brian Flores is a Bill Belichick disciple, and Bill Belichick coached Tom Brady, and Tom Brady can't seem to beat the Saints while he's in Tampa. Some weird transitive property logic here, guys, but I'm going to go Saints. Saints over Dolphins.
A lot of calculations went into that.
Fishing for fantasy.
And for our final segment of the podcast, per usual, we have Fishing for Fantasy. We're actually really excited this week. Past couple weeks have been kind of rough. There haven't been a lot of things for Fishing for Fantasy. We kind of had to sit you down, the take you behind the shed speech where, hey, sorry, you're done. Like, your season's over. We can't save you. You're done. This week it's a little bit different. We actually might be able to save you. Your fantasy football league, you're in cardiac arrest. We think we can save you. We have some really good picks that could potentially win you your championships or your playoffs, depending whatever your league assigned. So we feel good this week. Up first, for quarterback, we have Tyler Huntley, and this one, of course, comes with an asterisk. So Tyler Huntley, despite being owned in 1% of leagues and being played in less than 1% of leagues, he just dropped 36 points on a competent Packers defense. If Lamar is a no-go next week, he has the upside of a league winner. He passed efficiently, he didn't make big mistakes, he got rush yards, and he got 2 rushing touchdowns to top it off. He's everything you want in a fantasy quarterback. Tyler Huntley, consider stashing him on your bench in case Lamar Jackson sits another week.
Next up, we have none other than running back Ronald Jones, a.k.a. Mr. Rojo himself. Leonard Fournette, he runs angry, and Ronald Jones can't be Leonard Fournette, but Ronald Jones can do things that Leonard Fournette can't do also, like take a football 87 yards for a touchdown with his 4.3 game speed. I mean, I don't think he ran a 4.3, but the guy can run a 4.3 in pads. It's kind of weird to see. He's one of those faster in pads than he was at the combine, and he was pretty athletic at the combine too. He's expected to start with Fournette missing a lot of time with this hamstring. I think they'll probably play it safe with Lenny, miss him 2 to 3 weeks. Assuming that the Buccaneers won't play Leonard Fournette over the next 2 to 3 weeks, I expect Ronald Jones to be able to put up, 15 carries, 13 carries, 80 yards, touchdown. It's not going to be crazy, but it's definitely enough for a flex position.
Up next, we have running back Justin Jackson of the Chargers. Now, he is rostered in less than 1% of leagues, so we have a running back that's available in almost every single league. So Austin Eckler, everyone knows he's like number 2 in fantasy. He is a stud because not only does he get rushing attempts, but he also gets a heavy pass volume. Now, with him dealing with multiple injuries, he was rep counted, and Justin Jackson was able to get 11 points, primarily with rushing attempts. So already pretty good, but here's the kicker. Eckler currently is on the COVID reserve, and I believe he was put there fairly recently. There's a chance that he doesn't play. If he is, for whatever reason, out next week, whether it's due to his injuries or whether it's due to being on COVID reserve, Justin Jackson could be in for a very big game. The Chargers love feeding their running backs, and this kid has shown proficiency on the ground. He could be one of those guys that sneaks up and gives you 15 to 20 points and puts you in a position to win your playoff game or even better, your championship.
Next up, we're going to be moving to wide receivers. Honestly, he was one of my favorite, quote, under the radar guys after he ended up with 5th round draft capital in the offseason. I'm a big dynasty football player. So when it came to his dynasty value, it kind of plummeted. And I tried to snatch him up in a couple different leagues. It's going to be none other than the sun god, Amon-Ra St. Brown. This dude is still only rostered in 20% of redraft leagues. It's kind of crazy to me. He's had 33 or 34 targets over the last 3 weeks. No, it's 35. He had 12, 12, and 11. So he's playing with unreal amounts of volume. And sure, he's not putting up 180 yards receiving and 2 touchdowns, but I would take 8 catches for 98 yards and a touchdown every week of the year, especially after a lot of y'all's teams and my teams laid some pretty fat eggs this past week, unfortunately. So definitely expect him to be good. Don't let us be like him, how we were with Hunter Renfrow, where we're telling you, and you don't make the move. I have already picked him up in the leagues that I can for redraft. He's playing Atlanta's awful pass defense next week, guys. Please hop on that one.
Yeah, he could get crazy points in PPR next week. Up next, we have Green Bay Packers wide receiver Marquez Valdez-Scantling. That is quite a mouthful. He is only rostered in 11% of leagues, but he has had a huge target volume over the past 4 weeks. He has had 10, 9, 5, and 7 targets. So if your championship is in week 17, like one of my leagues, he has Minnesota's 32nd ranked defense against fantasy receivers. Last time he faced Minnesota, he put up 22.3 points against Minnesota. A guy like this sitting on your waivers, if you have one of those week 17 championships, he could be a league winner.
Next up, we have tight end. Honestly, guys, I think we're only really recommending tight end based on the potential here and the fact that we wanted to stay consistent and at least recommend one. Because I don't know, unless you're dealing with tight end injuries, because I know Travis Kelce's out next week. Darren Waller's missed a lot of time this year. Yeah. And all it takes is one accidental brush in with the wrong person to get a landing on the COVID list. But David Njoku, that's going to be the tight end that we kind of suggest. He's only been rostered in 15% of leagues. And you saw what Mark Andrews did to the Packers. So there's a chance that David Njoku can replicate that. The dude is superior when it comes to his athletic ability. Just has to be able to hold on to the ball and consistently separate.
Yep. And I'm going to give you a controversial hot take. I think Tyler Huntley's better than Baker Mayfield. So,
hey, man, I'm for it.
Take that for what it's worth.
I was super big on Tyler Huntley when he came out in the draft, and then he ended up undrafted. I was confused. I was like, why did nobody take a chance on him? And now he's an exclusive rights free agent next year and then a restricted free agent the year after. He was probably a top 7 quarterback in that draft, and he still did not get the love he needed.
And we'll see how things go. I mean, he could end up being a Ravens starter. We'll see. I don't think so either.
Take you've ever had.
But you saw how he played. If Lamar sits one more week and he balls,
no way.
We'll see. They would never do it. They would never do it. But Lamar hasn't signed a contract. He hasn't inked anything yet. Anyway, we'll save that rampant speculation for future weeks. I'm not saying it's. I don't think they would ever do it. But Huntley,
never know. I guess
Huntley's kind of a baller.
If that's like a plus 10,000 in Vegas, I guess you put $100 on it and hope for the best.
Yeah.
So
up next, we have some defenses. We're going to recommend 2. One we've already recommended in the past. So the Seattle Seahawks, they are most likely going to be available as they have not really been a dominant defense for most of the season. They've stepped up their game a lot in the midseason, and their Week 16 and Week 17 matchups are juicy. They have the Bears and the Lions. So this is a team that could end up giving you some big value. I suspect there will be a high floor, so probably get you 5, 6, 7, 8 points consistently in those 2 games, assuming no big plays or crazy things happen. Fairly safe bets. Seattle Seahawks.
And then to finish off our podcast for our recommendations, our last is going to be the Eagles defense, and solely based on the fact that they play the Giants this week and then Washington football in Week 17. So if you're in a league where you don't have a stud defense like New England's or someone else's, and New England's defense was not a stud defense this week. So if you don't have one of those defenses set up, honestly, the Eagles could be like a game saver for you in the sense that they're going to beat the crap out of Washington, for a lack of better words. And I think that they're going to do the same thing to the Giants. So, avoid at your own peril.
All right. Well, that's going to be the end of the podcast. It's always weird switching from 3 people to 2 people, but
yeah,
I feel like we've already shouted out our Twitter when I was screaming "Fight me" earlier.
Yeah, no, we did.
Yeah,
but that's okay. We could still do it.
Okay.
Beltway Babblers, follow Beltway Babblers. We are Babble of the Beltway on TikTok. We still have yet to put anything up there, but. On the real, y'all. So I'm more of an off-season guy anyways because of my years of having Washington suck and having to look forward to draft prospects and stuff. So on the real, expect a lot out of me, at least on the TikTok in the off-season specifically, so I can make sure that I have the receipts when I say this guy's going to be good and then he sucks. All right. So be ready for that because I'm pumped about it. We follow us on that. Babble of the Beltway. Follow us on Twitter. Give us a shout out on Spotify. Spotify is doing this new thing where they also do 5, ranking out of 5 stars. If you guys like us, give us 5 stars. If you guys hate us, just don't do anything. Just don't touch it. Just let it be. We'll do like 1 or 2 real reviews. Everybody else just fraudulently give us 5 stars.
We will be deleting anything that's a 4 or lower, just so you all know.
But anyways, thank you guys so much. As always, we're happy to bring you a product that we like here at Babble of the Beltway. Thanks for listening. I'm Zach Miles.
I'm Rob Sahutsky. We even botched it with 2 of us, man. We need to get our stuff together.
I thought you were going to say it.
I thought you were going to say it. I was like,
but I was like, why would I say it if... That's not staged, guys. This is not staged. Like, this is actually...
Yeah, guys, this isn't staged. Do you know what this is? This is Babble of the Beltway.